Boom! Ha-ha! We're on! We're live again.
Oh, hey, no, this is a big one. So
this is a big one.
I'm going to be peeking at my phone a little bit because I am going to be spamming this all over Facebook too, so we can get this going. Because I want to get some good conversations, some good talks going. This is huge. It's so huge, in fact, that we forgot to say hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. Oh, Mel, Dark Side of the Grill.
There we go.
Griller, Chris. We are just living our best lives here on a Tuesday night.
That's it. Welcome to After the Cook, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesdays, you know how it is. We have a very special guest with us tonight. He's sitting in the green room right now. A couple of you were banking that he wouldn't even show up. We got Derek Wolf from Over the Fire Cooking in the house tonight. I'm elated, over the top, pumped. Can't wait. It'll be so deadly. So deadly. Yeah.
How's your Tuesday going, Mel?
Yeah, whatever. This is it. Everything led up to this. That was it was a day. You know how it is. It was a day, but I'm glad it's over. Happy to be home. I had Pizza Hut for dinner. Everybody that was lippy about it, don't care. I took the day off. Had to make sure the kids were fed. I still had a sack for lunch tomorrow. We're happy.
Nice. You know, there's something that I still like about those ordered pizzas, or ordering a nice pizza. It doesn't have to be a nice pizza, but there's just some nostalgia about having that pan pizza that brings me back to. I don't know if they had this up in Canada, but down here we had this thing called Book It.
Okay.
When we were kids, where we'd have to read so many books. I mean, we're talking like second, third grade, and every 10 books we would read, we get to go to Pizza Hut and we'd get our own free personal pan pizza.
Nice.
And then we'd get this button, and then every time we get that pizza, they'd add a little sticker to that button. Which just kind of brings me back to that. One of those stupid little things, but it's what I think about when I think of Pizza Hut.
Well, up here right now, the Pizza Hut does $5, $5, $5.
Ooh.
So if you order one large, you get 3 more mediums for $5 a piece.
We had that commercial here like 15 years ago. You guys really are 15 years behind us.
We're 15 years behind America in everything we do.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so it's like all the rage right now, this $5 thing. It's crazy. Uh-huh. And we get the thin crust, right? You don't get as much pizza, but then you're not just eating all the burnt dough, right? You're actually getting a lot of pizza, which is nice. I like it. I like it a ton.
That is awesome.
Yep. Right on, man. Well, are we ready to do this or what?
Yeah, I think we should just jump right in.
I think we should do it. I am so pumped. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to introduce you to Mr. Derek Wolf.
Hey, there he is.
What's going on, guys?
Derek Wolf, if you guys don't know, you probably wouldn't be on here, but at Over the Fire Cooking. Find him on Instagram and Facebook. Are you on YouTube too?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't go to the YouTubes a whole lot, but
good old YouTube.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, welcome.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you.
You guys, you're gonna have to put up with a little bit of a southern accent. I hear your Canadian and northern accent, so we'll have to put up with a little bit of a southern one.
You're not that bad.
Yeah, it's really neat, actually. The amount of different accents and stuff we pick up through all of this, like, it's so cool, man. I love it.
How many episodes have y'all done so far?
We've been doing this since March last year.
Yeah.
We
started doing it on Instagram, where we could just kind of, everyone was on quarantine, and it got into the fact where it's like, okay, we can't go out, so we're just going to do like a dive bar on Instagram where we can chat and talk, and that was great. But then it got to the point where like, all right, you want to have guests on because people are going to get sick of just talking to the two of us idiots.
Yeah.
So we moved it to YouTube, where we have different mediums where we can do this and kind of have fun with it.
Yeah. No. Also, howdy, Ron. What's going on, Lee? Howdy.
Right on. Yeah, that's fantastic, man. That's so I'm not going to lie to you. You were one of the first major follows that I had on Instagram. As soon as I dipped in there, I don't know, since as soon as I got on Instagram, you like owned it. It was amazing. Everywhere I turned, there was another Derek Wolf post, and you were doing exactly what I wanted to see, and nothing's changed, man. I've been on like 2.5 years now, maybe 3 years, and it's been just solid. Even when I'm not watching your page, someone is posting your stuff, and it's killer every time. It's I absolutely I go bananas every time you do something different. It's like that rack of lamb I did, right?
Yeah.
What a crazy cook that is, and it was so simple. So simple.
Really easy. Yeah. Next time we need to put some stuffing on the top of it.
That's everyone said that to me. They're like, "You don't have stuffing in Canada?" I'm like, "We sure do."
Yeah,
but not on lamb. Like that's
when I did that cook, I just wanted to go for the rack, and then halfway through, I was like, because one of my chef friends told me about doing the onion, like wrapping the onion around it so it keeps the circular form. Or else I did that twice. There you go. I did that twice. The first time, let's just say it didn't keep a good circular shape. It was pretty bad. But yeah, honestly, that was one of my favorite things. And then later on, he was like, "Oh, why'd you not put stuffing in it?" I was like, "I didn't know. Like, I didn't know that I was supposed to put stuffing in that. I was just going for the rack of lamb crown." So,
well, that's the first, like, I don't know, Instagram rack I did, crown rack was pork, and I turned it into the Sarlacc pit, if you're familiar with Star Wars at all. And I had Boba Fett flying out of it with like all my toys out and everything. And it was awesome. You do that just to not even eat it. I'm like, oh, I ate it. 100% I ate it. I just played with it for a half hour first. It's no different than doing the photo shoots we already do. I just got to pull the toys out.
Right.
Yeah. That's one of the funniest things, right? We get used to eating cold food. It is what it is. That's
yeah. It doesn't get much better.
So, yeah, so I don't know if you guys do this too, but I try to plate my kids first, get them their food. Then my wife. So usually what I do with her is like I do like the practice round of plating.
Okay.
What I think I'm gonna do, get her food, and then I can start plating my food, take my pictures, and that way I don't get the cranky wife, because if the wife gets cranky, it's all downhill from there.
I understand that. That's for sure.
No, that's usually if it's a weekend and I'm doing a big I don't know, shoot, right? I'll try and get that done. I'll cook everything twice.
Yeah.
Is what I like to do. I'll cook, honestly, like we'll have a meal, I'll cook a turkey, but I'll do something as a backup and do that as the shoot before it's a pain, man. It's a huge pain, but that way I can eat with everybody.
Right.
And yeah, the second half of the cook is so easy because you already did it once and plated it and whatever.
Yeah. I understand that. When I was first starting, I used to buy 2 of everything because I would always F up the first one, and then I'd figure out what I did wrong, and then I would do it the next time. And so that's always been my trick is just buy a second one just in case, or marinate 2 bags full of skirt steaks, so you can just do one, and then if you screw it up, you clean off the grill and do it again.
And if you don't screw it up, you're happy because you can eat it twice.
No, and that's the thing, right? If you cooked it a bit much, to back off on the next one, right?
Yeah.
And also that's one of the big ones, and also my camera angles and shit like that.
Yeah,
that all comes together, and I'll work the kinks out of the first one, so the second one is just put it on and go, and then ready to eat. So yeah.
And there's something to be said about that too. Is when you're doing or prepared to do multiple cooks, you can get the recipe right. I think that's one downside of what I see on Instagram right now is there's a lot of people that will cook a recipe once and then post that recipe, and it's like, well, it's great, and it takes a lot of work to actually put up those videos, but you got to make sure that recipe is good before you just post it.
I understand. I get that.
No.
I mean, I can't imagine the amount of. I'm sure it's slick for you now. Like now you got it down. You know exactly what shots you want for your videos, how you want to edit it, you know what you're going to edit, but just the learning curve that you had to go through to start all that. I mean, that had to just be hours of editing, and
it was years more than hours.
Yeah.
It took a long time. It did.
Oh.
And I mean, not everybody figures it out, or I don't know, even gets lucky enough to be found. So I'm just thankful for where we're at, and people that have been a part of it, and people that have supported us and helped us, and all the above. So yeah, it's I know sometimes I'll get on these calls, or y'all are like, I've been following you for forever, and I'm like, dude, I'm just a dude that cooks in my backyard that's just trying to have fun. And there's so much stress that goes on. I mean, cooking is only like maybe 15% of like my life when it comes to over the fire. I mean, we're writing, we're editing, we're dealing with clients, or texting and doing emails, or dealing with taxes, or whatever it is. And so it's just like, when I finally get out there and being able to cook, I finally feel like, wow, this is like actually, we're actually making content. We're actually doing something that's like intriguing and interesting. But honestly, like, I get asked all the time, like, what is the special trick, or if anything? And if you guys know what it is, you tell me, because I haven't really figured it out either. I think consistency has been the only trick for me. So,
and I think you hit it on the head. When you're out there cooking, everything else, the cooking is the fun part.
Yeah.
The cooking is when you're in your element, when you're back there, when it's kind of like, this is when all is right in the world. I get my time. It's just me, fire, and meat, or whatever it is we're cooking. The stress is gone. I mean, there might be, some stress where you're like, okay, I got this piece of meat on there, and, you can cook it 100 times, and you're always thinking, okay, gotta make sure it's right.
Yeah.
What if my thermometer is reading wrong? And there's always that moment while the steak is resting before you slice it that you're like, gosh, I hope I didn't overcook it.
Yeah, I understand that. Or just, I don't even know. I've gotten to a point now where it's like all the little nuances. I mean, if there's a little bit too much char on one side, it's all I hear in my head is the comments that people are going to say. So I'm just like, I'm commenting them before it, like, God, I mean, people are on there, and I'm just like, oh, dang, that looks raw. You might as well bite it off the butt of a cow, like all those comments are already going through my head before I'm like, well, no, that's medium rare. And, I just have little internal battles with my own self, or even just like, I mean, I'm trying to do almost everything in my content outside. And so I think that the issue for that is like the coloring and
Mm-hmm.
What you can do. Like steak looks 10 times more well done under that blue light that you get outside than it would under more of like a yellow or white light that you could get inside. And so but then at the same time, you just struggle with like, man, I want to stay on brand. I want to be like outside, whatever. But you still end up just trying to figure it out. Honestly, I'm still just figuring it out as I go. Also, I know Ron asked a really good question. So, but Ron was asking, where do I get a lot of my inspiration? All that stuff. Man, I traveled my whole life. I come from a family of foodies, and I don't have any culinary experience or anything special like that. But I think that it's a blending of traveling. It's things that are from my childhood. My dad grilled all the time, so it was doing stuff like that. I get a lot of inspiration from that. I get a lot of inspiration from my my grandfather who grilled for a long time, as well as like, man, I get a lot of inspiration from like chefs and people that I've worked with, and seeing things I've never seen done before, or trying to do things that may not necessarily, like a lot of times, I'll just be sitting there and think like, man, one of my favorite things, this might be sacrilegious, but like I love getting like a Parmesan crust on steak or like blue cheese crust on steak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking like, how would I do that outside? Like, I don't have a broiler. So just coming out with like stupid shit.
Yep.
And just seeing what you can do, and then it's been also fun too to see that like, man, there's so many resources. I've read so many cookbooks, like from front to back. You can't see behind me, but I just have like a massive collection of just cookbooks, anywhere from outdoor cooking and barbecue to, whatever. And so being inspired by that and little flavor profiles and all that stuff, it really comes from everywhere in my life.
I'm with you on that one. I absolutely love cookbooks. I read them like books.
Yeah.
I'm terrible at following recipes. But I'll go through them. I can really appreciate, especially the cookbooks that have just those nice pictures where they grab you. And it's like, I'll look at it, I'll get an idea from this, and I might mix it with an idea from this book, or about just picking up these different techniques. Who are some of your favorite, or what are some of your favorite cookbooks?
Oh man. I think if you don't own a Francis Mallman cookbook, you're not living life. If you want to do fire cooking, you need to really own a Francis Mallman cookbook.
Right.
And I think that it gives a lot of inspiration. That was one of the first things that I learned a lot from, was that there's a restaurant called Ox in Portland, and they have a fantastic cookbook called Around the Fire. And anyway, they talk a lot about classic Argentinian cuisine. And so I highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah, I think I have both of those.
Awesome.
Adam Perry Lang.
Yeah.
Inspiration stuff. All the different techniques that he comes up with.
Yep.
Recently, I got one from Lennox Hastings.
Yeah.
He was on that Netflix Chef's Table with Barbecue, and his focus is a lot. Like the first 80 pages, there's no recipes. It's all on like fire and ingredients and all of that. And he's got a big passion for that too. So that's a great resource for people that want to learn a little bit more about that too.
Well, it's just a good starting place. It's a good base education. And then just learning from that and figuring it out, and then just trying to make your own personal authentic touch to it makes the big key at the end.
Well, that's for me being up here in Canada. There's not a ton of, I shouldn't say that, there's a ton now of culinary everything. When I was a kid, we had like whatever leftover restaurants you guys had that made it up here and somehow still survived here, even though they were like dying in the States. It's amazing. Like, it's really, for me, it was like 3 or 4 TV shows of cooking that I would watch.
Yeah.
And then I would come up with kind of my own whatever from that, right? I would understand the flavor profiles from different things. It's much like the very first time I cooked butter chicken, I went on YouTube. And at first I watched somebody like straight from their cooking butter chicken just the way they would. Yeah. And then I realized half those ingredients I don't have, right? And then it's a mad panic to see like, okay, well, how would they do it in Brooklyn? And then let's try and mix the two so that we can get, close to what they, and it just, the evolution of the thing, right? When you understand the flavors of what you're putting in it and you understand the end result of what you're going for, it's neat to get there. However you get there, it's just like fire management or whatever, right? It's all part and parcel of the same recipe. And I absolutely love, and you can see that like in your videos, even though you're doing just a quick, here, how you doing, you can tell that you had that thought in there. You know what I mean? You could see it just in the back, the way the coals are sitting and they're nice and red, like you're going for just a straight sear, you're going for, and you're not digging into that, but you can just see it. It's nice. And then you see, you're cutting it and you see the crust and you see, I love it, man. I absolutely, very cool. Very cool.
Gosh, you're going to give me a really big head after this.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I can't. Well, a big one for me, Paul Perdum. When I was a kid, like the old school 80s, 70s. And I watched that when I was a kid, and try and find crawfish up here, like in Canada, like they're just starting to come across the border now in our waterways, but they're different than your guys' Louisiana crawfish, right?
Yeah.
To find like a live crawfish boil, forget about it. Like it's crazy. It's what I would give to just have the newspaper platter, like the whole 9 yards. Oh, it's
dump it all on there and just
There's so many things in the States you guys have that we can't even do up here. It drives me like my gator cook. That's still one of my bucket list cooks.
Well, you guys have more.
We get tidbits of gator, but that's it. You can't even get like decent chunks. It sucks. So, yeah.
So, speaking of fire management, Derek, I mean that's one of the things that I know we talked a little bit before we went live, but like when I think of live fire cooking, you're the first one that comes to mind with this, and it's just like you've taken that to such an awesome place. Like you have a few grills that you use. You have a barrels and an Oklahoma Joe, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the Broil system that you use.
Yep.
My favorite one though is that stack of bricks you have in your backyard. Where it's your traditional round fireplace. All of a sudden, you're showing this video. Okay, I'm just going to stack them up here. You pull out these swords, stick them in the ground, and you're building this fire. I mean, just where you've come with your fire management is awesome. And I don't think people understand how much practice went into that and how much you've learned into managing that, knowing how to, it's just as simple as how to set up your logs at first when you start your fire so they get going quicker, but then knowing when to cook on them so the flavor is right in your food. I mean, that's another big step that I think people miss.
Yeah. No, honestly, I think the hardest part is when you start like venturing into this kind of combo. Like I actually, I got really, really lucky a couple weeks back. I was able to have a phone call with Adam Perry Lang, and we were just chatting about fire cooking and crazy stuff. And anyway, we were just on the same wavelength, but he was just talking to, like, whenever I talk about it or anything like that, I always just say like you're dancing with it or you're just moving with it. There's like a esotericness about fire cooking that's really hard to just put your finger down on. I mean, like, I actually, in my cookbook, I always talk about my dad grew up surfing in California, and, he would tell me stories, obviously, of just like trying to catch that perfect wave or whatever it is. He was always going up the coast, waking up super early and skipping school and whatever. And anyway, he would always explain to me that like that perfect wave, it's like, you almost didn't even feel like you were surfing. Like you were just a part of the wave for a moment. And so, it's like cheesy or whatever you want to say. Like, I think that there's a moment in fire cooking when you just like start to understand the fire a little bit. Cause like the true part about it is like, if you want to call fire like a living thing, which I believe when it's alive, it is very much living. But like, it's going to do what it wants. It's you're just there. You're lucky if you can get it to listen to you. And so just learning what makes it listen and learning what makes it do, what you want it to do has been a long process. I've burnt a lot of food. I have destroyed some food. And yet at the same point, I've burnt myself. I have almost about quit a couple of times just because it's not easy. But I don't know. There's about 2 years ago, I was cooking out in my in-laws' cabin that's right on the lake, and I don't know. I was just sitting. They had like a little like tree swing. And I was just sitting there, and I don't know. We had just started the fire, and it actually worked. Getting it even lit sometimes with, not non-seasoned wood or whatever, because they don't really have a ton of really good wood out there, and we're just cooking for fun. And I got it all lit, and it was going, and I just had this moment where I just realized, like, man, like I just need to treat it with respect, and I just need to let it do what it wants to do. And when I realized that I can let it do what it wants to do and yet still find the nuances to get what I want done, is when I started to stop fighting fire and started just letting it do. And then I was just able to start being able to like manipulate it or whatever you want to call it, but like just make it work for me while it was able to do what it wants. And so whether that means, it's sizzling and popping. And so that means, all right, we need to split a little bit less wood down, get it smaller chunks, and we're able to just get a bigger fire rip in, or even just learning about like, when do I want to break it, or when is it time to just let it sit and stay high so it keeps a higher and taller flame. And so Adam Perry Lang, chef Adam Perry Lang, was saying like he just does stuff now and doesn't even think about it. Like he doesn't even know why he does stuff. He just does it. And I'm just like really striving to try and get to that place where you just know what you're supposed to do just because you're so in tune with fire. That being said, that's very, that's probably the most philosophical grilling talk in my.
Well, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, and that's something that I always strive for too. Is when we get started, we always have that naiveness about us where, okay, I'm going to control this fire. I'm going to learn how to do this. And it's not until we get to the point where we realize we're not going to control the fire. The fire is going to do what it wants to do. We have to learn to let it do that, and then just be able to react to what the fire is doing to get what we want out of it. If you go into it thinking, I'm going to make this fire do exactly what I want it to do, I'm going to, control it, you're going to be behind from the beginning. I think that once you realize that, hey, I think you hit it right on the head when you say it's a living thing, and you need to know when to feed it, when to give that oxygen, when to spread it out, when to do different things with it. And until you realize that, you're going to be playing from behind.
Yeah. Well, it's very similar to like I know both of you guys are really into sports, but like just anything in sports. I mean, especially like football or baseball, like specifically anything where you're throwing. Because like I played baseball for a really long time, and there's moments where like if you get too thinking about it, you'll start to like short arm throwing the ball. Like you'll just think too hard about it. And it's only when you just like really allow yourself to like let loose and let your arm or whatever. I mean, playing hockey, just let yourself do it. Your body will just figure it out. And so I think the same goes with fire too. I think a lot of people, and I agree with you, a lot of people walk into it thinking, I need to control it. And I mean, obviously there's a level of control where you don't want it to get out of control. But I think at the same point, like when you start to allow it to be what it wants to do, you start to really open a lot of doors and start to see the little nuances, and then begin to start seeing why you can cook certain foods certain ways and how certain chefs are able to get certain things to work. And then you're not as afraid to cook a steak when you see videos of chefs cooking steaks with a roaring, ripping fire, and you're like, I would burn the crap out of it. And you're like, if you know what you're doing, like the point is, let's get a really great sear and then let's slowly cook it at some point too, or then do it the opposite way. Like you just start to really understand how it works, and then you're able to really feel a lot more confident behind it.
One thing I had to say when you were talking about the fire being alive and learning to kind of watch what she does and learn to deal with her actions as you try and get done what you're trying to get done at the same time. I think for every chef that's worked around the coals, worked around the logs, worked around the fire, you can kind of compartmentalize what you're doing that fits to you right away. I know Chris was already thinking about the open pit, or maybe the firebox and the egg. That's where he was going. Everything you were saying related perfectly to that. It also related perfectly to me thinking about a stick burner, right? And doing the exact same thing. It's a bit colder out today. The meat's not going to cook nearly as fast. I'm stacking logs inside of the stick burner on the sides to dry them out more than I usually would.
Yeah.
Right. To get that fire to burn more the way I need it to burn. It's neat how I'm positive Chris is in the same boat here. We can take what we have in front of us and figure out the mechanics of it by watching what she does.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
to figure out what our end goal is for whatever it is, whether it be smoking a brisket for 14 hours or cooking a steak for 1. Like it's all in the same canoe, right? I love it. I absolutely love it. And I love that there are so many people with that passion for it that can just see what she's doing and then work around you know what she wants to do. It's
well, it takes a lot of practice too. Like anybody that's out there that's thinking like, the hard thing about it too, and the one biggest thing that I've had to just learn to admit, it's the same thing with social media. It's like, there will never be a point where I've ever mastered it. Fire cooking, grilling, barbecue, whatever you want to say. Like, dude, I'll never call myself a chef because I've never, whatever you want to quantify as being a chef, I'm not going to sit there and tell you that I am. But the one thing I'll always say is that like, I'm constantly willing to learn a new thing, a new technique, a new way, and learn from the mistakes and move forward. And, and I think it's a hard lesson. When you want to do something so bad, whether it's social media or whether it's, cooking just in general, it's a hard lesson to screw something up or have to make adjustments and make the wrong choice. But at the same time, I don't know, after a while, you just start to understand it and you start to understand fire, and you start to figure it out. And I think the fun part about it is the fact that it's completely different every single time. It's a new experience. It's a new fire. And so it still does the same thing, but you got to conquer it in a different way. And I think that's what keeps me coming back every single time.
Well, it keeps the challenge. You could certainly cook on a gas grill. And nothing against people that do cook on a gas grill. You can cook good food on a gas grill, and you know that it's going to be consistent.
Yeah.
With the exception of flare-ups and stuff like that. But there's ways to minimize that.
The greedy part for me right away, I want to know, what's your wood supply look like?
Oh,
do you have a Quonset in the back of your acreage for like your wood? Like, do you take your humidity measurements and everything? You have different species of woods. I'm so curious. That's right away.
Man, I probably should be more invested. I have a wood guy. So I recently was able to really get on board. There's a couple of musicians here in Nashville that started making, started to actually make kiln dried wood, with like really specific types of wood. So I'm able to start picking, whatever I want: red oak, white oak, hickory, like, you just name it. And so I'm able to do that. And so that's been like my biggest thing. But honestly, dude, I got like 2 big old cord racks in the back, and, they're always full unless my dad comes up. He has a wood fire stove in his house, so he's always burning and stealing my wood.
What's your wood of choice?
Man, I personally like white oak. I personally like it mostly because I love bourbon. So unless I'm super mistaken, I'm pretty sure that most barrels are made out of white oak, bourbon barrels. And so it just has a really elegant flavor. Although I have been getting more into some red oak, and even when I was out on the West Coast, a lot of like Santa Maria style cooking is wild red oak, and it's so good. It is so good. I mean, I don't know what it is that makes it so good, but I love it. I love hickory. I love some of the other woods. I like cherry a lot. We get a lot of wild cherry out in East Tennessee. So I love some wild cherry, but it's just a little harder to come by.
Yeah, we can get a lot of hickory up by me in Wisconsin. So I typically have a decent amount of hickory. And then oak, you can get oak too, but it's hard. You got to find someone that you trust up here. Otherwise, they throw in poplar and they pass it off as hardwood, or they'll be birch, which it's not terrible. Oak and hickory are my go-to. As far as somebody asked about least favorite wood, for me, I am not a fan of mesquite. I don't like the harshness of that smoke. Maybe it's just I just prefer it to just be toned down a little. But mesquite's probably the wood that I like the least.
Dude, I love mesquite.
Yeah.
I'm probably the 1 in 1,000 people that like actually really likes it, but oh man, I love it. It's a little bit like Scotch to some degree in like the flavoring. Like it can be very overpowering.
Uh-huh.
And when it's done wrong, man, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
But I personally think that's probably going to ruffle some feathers, but I don't really like apple. Mostly because I think the flavor profile on apple is fantastic, but the pesticides and everything that they have to add to apple to make it that wood just turns me off. So
see, we're good up here because bugs don't live for 10 months of the year. So we're just in a deep freeze for 10 months of the year. We're fine. That's it's great. Yeah.
The other thing is part of my aversion to mesquite is that was probably the first wood I ever used. So it was back in the point where it was like, okay, I'm going to throw the wood chunks on my egg and then quick throw my meat on because it's getting all this smoke.
Yeah.
So that's the time to do it. It was before I kind of knew that, okay, pull it back a little bit, let that white smoke kind of bellow out before you put it in there. And that could be a big part of why I had that aversion to it early, because you just get that really acrid, just astringent, harsh smoke from putting it on too early. And, that might be something that as I've learned more, I should go back and revisit.
You know what you should do for Mel? You should find a big dirty moose roast.
Okay.
And slow cook it with mesquite. That's what you should do.
Okay.
Trust me, brother.
I'll find some wild moose here in Nashville. Yeah. Nashville, Tennessee.
It's up here, man. I think that's one of the reasons why I jumped on your channel as quick as I did, right? Just from being outside and whatever up in Canada, like that's, all like 95% of my friends, their traveling is to the mountains.
Yeah.
Or maybe to the ocean to go fishing, but it's still on this side of the border and it's still in nature, right? Yeah. And the first thing they do is make a fire, just like one of your posts, and then throw kubasa on whatever, right? And it's awesome. Like here's a question for you, Mel. Yes.
Can you sell, or can the grocery stores or butchers sell moose or venison up in Canada?
Yes, they can if they have a license and it's been inspected.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like the same quality as like beef.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
And probably even more stringent depending on the wild, crazy things that they could potentially have.
It's crazy up here. It's crazy in Alberta because we have so many fields, like farmers' fields and agriculture, right? Our deer eat grain.
Wow.
Quite crazy that everything. If you go to BC, you go deer hunting, they eat like cedar, pine needles, stuff like that. And you taste the gaminess huge. Up here, it's almost like our game is kind of beefy.
So it's not just Alberta beef. It's not Berta beef. It's Berta venison.
Well, Ted Nugent hunts here for a reason. Just saying. Whenever possible, he likes to make a trip out to Alberta. Yeah.
Gosh.
It's a good time. It's a good time. Yeah.
All right, Derek. So we talked a little bit about your grills.
Yes.
What's your ask you to pick your favorite grills, like asking you to pick your favorite kid.
That's true.
You're looking for a relaxing cook.
Yeah.
What are
Okay.
you gonna do?
If I'm not trying to impress anybody and I'm not really like doing anything,
You're doing it just for you.
yeah, it's just for me, dude. I mean, this might be very off-brand, but the Oklahoma Joe Judge, like just my classic charcoal grill. I mean, it's just so quick and easy, and throw a steak on there and be done in, 10 minutes and you're ready to go. I mean, I love lump charcoal. I obviously, when I first started, it was pretty much only like real wood. But obviously, I've really kind of depended on lump charcoal just because, you can't always use real wood for absolutely. I mean, lump charcoal is real wood, but, you can't always just use uncharcoaled wood. And so I love using that one. The only other one, though, that I really love using, and I swear to goodness, the Brio X Series, it works. Like the smokelessness, the consistency. I mean, you might as well be cooking on a open fire Kamado. Like it's so quick and easy. It gets ripping hot super fast, and it keeps a fire going probably like how long y'all's BGEs or even KJs can really go. I mean, it's definitely not going that long because it definitely, obviously you guys have a cap or like a lid. But man, dude, the Brio X Series, it keeps a hot fire for like 4 or 5 hours, so it's good.
Yeah, and that's a really cool looking system too. I mean, it allows you to be able to adjust to the fire, because you said it could be doing different things, and it gives you that ability to adjust to it. Much like, Mel, like our brain turns where if our fire tips up or our temp goes up and we're working on the egg, we know just to hit the top vent a little bit or the bottom vent here and do stuff there. But like for you, it allows you to just raise my grade up or change that, and that's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, because not a lot of open fire pits have. You're usually pretty set on wherever the grill grate is to the fire distance. Until you figure it out, you're pretty much trying to just like learn on how to keep a consistent fire for the right distance that you're at. And so I think that learning how to deal with that, the nice thing that the Brio offers, and same with Oklahoma Joe, is that it has the movable grill grate system. And so you end up just being able to kind of do whatever you want to do and be in and out and make really quick cooks. That being said, though, I mean, some of my favorite cooks that I've ever done probably were not even really using a grill itself. So
that's a shopping cart down by the river. That's I know. That's awesome.
So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, favorite cook. So not just, again, you're not impressing anybody. Maybe you're trying to impress your wife.
Okay,
you're going to try to impress your wife. Maybe it's her birthday or her anniversary. You want to make her something that you think is going to just blow her away.
So there's two that come to mind. A couple back over the holidays, I've got a center cut beef tenderloin, and I filleted it open, and I made like a garlic and horseradish paste. And then rolled it back up. And then my favorite way of cooking beef tenderloin is just you'll sear it down. And then once you develop any form of crust, it doesn't need to be very deep, because I'm one of those guys that doesn't necessarily believe in I believe in constantly flipping your steak. but live your life. And anyway, I'll throw the tenderloin down, and then once it just develops just an outer crust, I'll do like a garlic butter baste, and I'll just start basting the crap out of it, and keep flipping it and keep flipping it and keep flipping it and basting it. That was one of the best steaks I've ever made. I mean, obviously, it's really hard to go wrong with beef tenderloin and a crap ton of butter, but that was probably my favorite by far.
So
Yeah.
I think that's where being a disciple of Adam Perry Lang comes in, because he's very hands-on too. And this is one of the things that you pick up in his books is when you're flipping that meat, there might be times where a little bit of that meat sticks to the grill, right? You flip it and there's little tears in that surface, but what you're doing is you're making little crannies where, as you're basting it, that's going to go into those little crevices. That's going to flavor that. You flip it again, it might stick again, but you're going to make these little just micro marks in there, which are going to pick up extra flavor. And as you're basting it, that's essentially caramelizing on the outside.
Yeah.
It's adding this level of flavor. I mean, and he's huge on the herb brushes too. So, if you're using an herb brush to baste it with, the oils from the herbs as they're warming up are releasing, and you're just adding a little bit more flavor. And I'm very much like you. I'm very hands-on with especially my steaks. People say, "Oh no, you just flip it once."
No.
That's always my tough thing too. Is I always get asked like, "Well, how many minutes per side?" And I'm always like, "I don't know. Like, I don't know how thick your steak is. I don't know how hot your grill is. I don't know what grill you're cooking on. If you're cooking
outside, what's the temp outside?
Yeah, like how cold is it outside? What's the point? Like, did you reverse sear it? Like, I don't know. So I think that there's a lot of that. The other cook that was my favorite, I long time ago saw Alton Brown do a charcoal broil where he had a porterhouse steak and he got a big charcoal chimney, and then he seared the outside underneath the steak. And I have an obsession with broiling. I just love broiling. So whether I'm using tinfoil and then adding charcoal on top of it to start to get like a crust or whatever, doing much like I always call that like a cowboy broil, or just something else. I got obsessed with this idea. And so anyway, I made a filet mignon charcoal broiled steak, and then I topped it off with butter. And I kid you not, man, that was so good. I mean, the one thing is like, you're going to probably get some char, like a little bit of char on it, whether you want to or not, just because it's just really hard to control that heat that comes off of it. But it was so delicious. And so I think that it cooks it really well, especially with filet mignon. I've not tried it with anything more fat.
Walk me through the charcoal broil part.
Say what?
Walk me through the charcoal broil part. How are you broiling it?
Okay, so I got my Oklahoma Joe charcoal chimneys, so they're pretty big.
Uh-huh.
They're not like the classic like Weber chimneys. And so what I did is I preheated a whole charcoal chimney full, and I waited until it was about 3/4 of the way. So like that last bit is still a little bit black. It's just starting to pop on the top. And then I got 2 fire bricks and I set it on a cold grill. And I put the fire bricks down so that I could raise the chimney up, because it's still probably got like 1.5 inches of lip between the base mesh and then where it will actually sit down on the ground. And so I put the steaks down, and then I put the charcoal chimney right over the top of it. So you're basically broiling it like you would in an oven. And it makes this like super deep crust, super duper deep crust. And it was absolutely delicious. I loved it. I saw Alton Brown did something similar to that back in like 2011. And so I remember watching that episode and I was like, I'm going to try this and see what I can do with it. And it was freaking awesome. Actually, the funniest part for me is like it was the same thing with Adam Perry Lang. There have been tips and techniques and tricks and stuff like that I I don't know. I've some of like I didn't even own Charred and Scruffed until like 2 weeks ago. Like I knew who Adam Perry Lang was, but like I didn't even like really have any of his cookbooks or anything like that. And same with like Alton Brown. I remember sitting down having a cigar with one of my friends like 6 months ago and just being like, man, obviously I saw the episode a long time ago, so maybe that was deep down in the back of my brain. But I was just sitting there, I was like, man, I'd love to be able to like charbroil like they do at like Ruth's Chris or something like that, or they get like a really awesome deep crust. I was like, but I don't think you can really do that over open pit fire. And I was like, what could I use? And I was like, oh my gosh, the chimney. And so I just got on. I was like, oh man, I can't be the first one that has thought of like using a chimney to charbroil. And I'm pretty sure I get on YouTube and freaking Alton Brown's had a video. I know Logo had a video like 2 years ago with them doing like a tomahawk. Like I was like, dang it. I had this beautiful epiphany thinking I had invented something in fire cooking. I was like, oh, well, I guess not.
Any thoughts about doing that on like a lit grill where you're searing it from both sides at once?
I mean, I haven't tried it. I think the hardest part you'll run into on that is that you're going to develop a non-seared grill mark side, and then you'll have one side that has like grill marks.
All right. Yeah, because I'm thinking like the Mini Max. So the Mini Max Big Green Egg, it's much closer to the firebox. Where you can get it about that same, maybe 2-3 inches apart on each side. So if you reverse seared like a tenderloin or a fillet, you could have that on there and then quickly seared it on each side. I mean, you could conceivably sear it in like 30 seconds total and be done with it.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Also, Ron, you're 100% right. It's very difficult to find something that hasn't been done before. Dude, I've like had 5 or 6 ideas thinking I was the first one. Get on Google and I was like I remember 2 years ago, I was sitting down and we had satay wings, like peanut butter wings with some of my friends when I went out to Dublin for a cooking festival. And I thought, how stupid would it be if I meshed this with like habanero jelly and call it peanut butter and jelly chicken wings? So I made the recipe, wrote it down, didn't cook it until a couple of months ago, posted it, and came to find out that there's like 40 or 50 peanut butter and jelly chicken wings recipes out there. So I think this has been a recipe since like the 90s.
Whatever creative genius we had left in us, COVID has screwed us out of it. COVID has brought everybody to the table like in the maddest form possible. Like I was the other day, I was looking through my feed and someone had posted a rack of ribs with a cracker on top. And I was like, I don't even want to know what that is. I'm just going to keep scrolling. I don't even care.
Yeah.
Get into it a little bit or see, and I'm like, no, man, I'm not even. Yeah. We've decided to wrap the ribs around the cracker this time. That's okay. I don't care. That's not even cooking anymore. That's, it's crazy. It's absolutely, we've gone so far past the, which is good. Don't get me wrong. It's good to be that creative, but like,
yeah, at some point, I have a lot of fun with, like flavor profiles, like mixing things that are a little different, like maple syrup and what's an octo turkey, by the way?
You have to ask Mel.
There was a time when I took an octopus and I stuffed it inside of a turkey for Thanksgiving.
I think I have seen that.
It worked. It worked. The grease from the turkey actually grilled the octopus perfectly.
Hey,
So, yeah, it was. But at the same time, like it's
it's hard though because I find that like you have to be doing stuff like that in order to like be pushing the ball forward in some way. I think for me, my hardest thing is riding a hard line between like I want to push things and come out with stuff that's like crazy and unique and different, but at the same time, like
you don't want to be gaudy about it.
Yeah, or just like
I know that's
you don't even
that's where
want
I
to
come
do.
in. Everyone's like, "You're a World Wrestling Federation guy that cooks." I'm like, "Thank you, that's awesome. I love that." Yeah, like
Well, even just
find
like I don't even really want to like. Sometimes flavors just don't work. Like they just don't work. Like I mean, I've done maple syrup and hot chicken before, and it was fantastic. I've done maple syrup, and I've been on a very big maple syrup kick. But maple syrup and Cajun on ribs, I actually got that coming out soon, and it was actually pretty good. But at the same time, like I made some recipes where they just got scrapped. Like they'll never be seen, just because the flavor profiles were out there or the style of cooking was out there, but it was just not. No,
Yeah, I did a porchetta once with horseradish, thinking that I was already at the end of the table. Turns out when you're cooking with it, it doesn't work the same as when you add it when it's done. What you're eating is dirt that tastes like bacon. So that was a train wreck. Everyone they're like, "Wow, that looked beautiful." I'm like, "You obviously did not read the description where I said it tasted like dirt." That's like, it did taste like dirt. So don't ever make this. That's
And then there are things that work. Like then there are things that like really shouldn't work. Like those peanut butter and jelly chicken wings were freaking dope. Like I love Thai food. I love peanut butter. Like especially adding it on meat is actually like some people are like, "Oh, what the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, it's delicious. Like it's super good. And so honestly, that was one of my favorite ones. I did not use a sweet jelly for that, but getting some spice on it and whatever was pretty freaking good. And there's, there have been other things that have worked that maybe should not have. But yeah.
But it's funny that you said Nashville hot with maple, right?
Yeah.
My very first crack at like a proper Nashville hot chicken, I set up the Dutch oven on one of my big green eggs, and I was deep frying on one, and then I had like a heated cooling rack where I did the seasoning and everything, and like, so I had 3 eggs going to complete this chicken cook. And when I tasted it, I had misread how much cayenne pepper to put on it, and it was almost unedible. And me being Canadian, I was like, put maple syrup on it, we should be fine. Like, and like that was my first big whoa that was like not bad. And then it's funny that you say that, because I was like, that's straight up out of my playbook. Derek Wolf is talking about something out of my playbook now. That's fantastic. That's but it did. It really did happen, just to tame it down a bit, because it was just stupid. It was.
That was probably normal flavor. That was probably Nashville average flavor.
We were supposed to get together in October for Oktoberfest. And what I wanted to do, and that's in Stone Mountain, Georgia. We fly into Atlanta. My big plan this year was to take Mel straight from the airport. It's a 17-minute drive, and take him to Hattie B's.
Okay.
There's a Hattie B's in Atlanta, and there's one in Nashville. I mean, the original, I think, is in Nashville where Derek is. And I wanted to see him have some Hattie B's Nashville hot chicken, and that was taken away from us this year.
Yeah.
Where is your go-to place in Nashville for hot chicken?
I don't know if I want to tell you.
I know, right? Because
it's not the main one. Actually, the funny part is, like most of the like my favorite Nashville hot chicken place is not even known for its. Hey, there you go.
Hey. Are you glad you came on tonight? Hey? Yeah, there you go.
You were hurting for some followers, so we got you.
My favorite Nashville hot chicken place, hilariously enough, the guy was actually on Shark Tank because he wanted to make. I've never done this. I don't know if I could bring myself to do it, but it was ground shrimp burgers. That was like his thing, was doing like, it was like a Nashville seafood-ish bar. And anyway, it is, but he, ground shrimp burgers only go so far. And so he just started doing hot chicken. He used to sell it like out of the back in some way where it was the extreme levels, like the super duper duper hot chicken. And so anyway, he just started selling it for fun, and it really took off. And so that's been one of my favorite places to go. And there's a bunch of great places in Nashville. If you haven't tried Bolton's is fantastic. I mean, that's like one of the OG spots. But the place I like to go is called Big Shakes. Big Shakes. It's out in Franklin. So it's not Nashville. It's out in Davidson County instead of Williamson, or other way around, Williamson County instead of Davidson. Okay. But Big Shakes, it's the bomb, man. They have the best hot chicken.
So Nashville hot chicken then brings me to your line of seasonings.
Okay.
Right? So you have a Nashville hot chicken seasoning. Now, for those of you that don't know, he's got them through Spiceology.
Yeah.
Awesome spice company. They have a lot of really innovative stuff and flavors, and that's an area where, Mel was talking about some of the Indian cooking spices where you just can't find them. You can find a lot of those weirder Indian cooking spices on Spiceology, but they also have some collaboration seasonings where they work with different cooks, we'll say, and Derek has a great line of seasonings through them. Still to this day, probably my favorite is still your original. That Chipotle garlic. That it's so good on everything. I made those shrimp last night, and I got to the point where I already was skewered them, and we had a bag of shrimp, and they were the 41 to 51, so they're really small, and I already had like 30 of them skewered. I'm like, I'm not going to take them off and rub them with honey and all that. I'm like, I'll just put the Chipotle garlic on them, and I'll be good to go.
Man, that was because all of them. I've been pretty heavily invested in the development and the whole 9 yards. And that was really fun one. Because actually, not everybody knows, but I was supposed to come out with chimichurri, like a dried chimichurri. They offered it to me. That was supposed to be the first one. And I did a teaser post on my story about it, and everybody thought it was weed. And so I decided, I don't know if I want to have the first one I sell as, being that. And so because all the rubs have a story and a history and a flavor or a dish that they are inspired by. And so Chipotle garlic, I've said it before, I've said it on a couple of podcasts, but my senior year of high school, I moved from Atlanta, Georgia to El Paso, Texas. My dad lost his job in 2008. And so he got a really great opportunity. So I had 1 year where I lived right on the border of, Texas and Mexico. And I made some of the best friends of my life there in 1 year. And they used to, because I was the new white guy, they used to take me to all the crazy stuff and make me eat all the stuff that they know they shouldn't eat. And so one of the things we went to this little taco restaurant that had maybe a 70 on its health score, probably less than that. And anyway, I remember eating these tacos and you're right on the border with New Mexico and stuff. And so Chipotle and hatch chili and all those flavor profiles are just everywhere. And I'd never had it before. I grew up in the South. Spice was not Nashville hot chicken, maybe. I mean, that wasn't even really a big thing until about 5 years ago. And so I'd never had these flavor profiles before. I'd always had Tex-Mex-ish food. And this was much, much more different. And so just the usage of Chipotle and garlic and some of the cumin, the hatch chilies and coriander and or cilantro, just all those flavor profiles coming together with lime. And so I remember the side story of how this all started was I ate way too much, and we walked outside into this parking lot, and this super drunk guy because it was like the place you went when you were really wasted. And he walks up to us and he says, I will give somebody $100 for arm wrestling me if you win. And all my friends pushed me in front of this dude. And anyway, I had to arm wrestle him on the back of a truck in the middle of this taco place that barely has any, health score or whatever. And it was just like that moment I won. I really should win. He was so drunk. It was ridiculous.
Did he pay up?
And I got the $100. I gave it to my friend because it was his birthday. And I don't know, it was just like this moment where I was like, it was the Chipotle and it was the food. Cause like I've said it before, like I get asked all the time why I cook over fire or whatever. And like one of the things I say in one of my articles, I talked about that is that food is not just food. Like food is way more than food. Food is like an expression of a moment. It's an expression of things that we love. It's a part of who we are. And so, whenever I taste Chipotle garlic, all those flavor profiles that like Spiceology helped me to dial in on were just that moment of me, beating this guy, doing arm wrestling in the back of, this pickup truck right on the border, and just falling in love with like both Hispanic food, Latin American food. That's really where a lot of my inspiration just kind of exploded from it was more than food. It was the people, like the people. I just fell in love with the people and their style of cooking and the way they looked at the world. And so anyway, yeah. And so that's, Chipotle garlic, when you taste that, you taste me eating tacos on the border.
That just completely brings me back to my first job out of college when I was working as a floor nurse. When we worked our weekends, it ended up being where all three of the guys worked on the same weekend. Yeah. And, we worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 12-hour shifts. So we're like Sunday night, we always would go out for Mexican food. And, working in Milwaukee, we would go to, now it's not disrespectful when we say this, or it's not, anything meant racially, but we would call it DM, or we'd go out for, what most people would consider, dirty Mexican. Because it would be those places where they might not, there was the boutique Mexican restaurants that you could go to in downtown Milwaukee where, you could get these huge margaritas and all this, or there was the authentic Mexican places that we could go to where you had to watch a little bit where you parked your car or how you parked your car or everything, but it was the best food. And it was amazing. It started out with one of our patients, their parents owned this Mexican restaurant, and it was like you'd go there and you would have a carne asada taco, and you could just taste that it was cooked on a flat top that just had hours and days of melted fat on that flat top.
Yeah.
Where we could go and spend 3 times as much on one taco at the boutique Mexican place, and it was just missing that extra something. Where this place, the waitress didn't speak English, so we had to, we had to point at the menu items, but it was as authentic as you can get in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
For that, and it was just fantastic. The funny thing is we went there one night and I ordered a Corona, and she came out with like this 24-ounce Corona. So the next time she comes on, I'm like, no. I got to drive home, and we worked a small one. So then she comes out with this 6-ounce Corona. It was like the
Coronita. Yeah. The Coronita. Yes.
All right. Well, I feel like Hagrid, but it was the best food. And when you were explaining your, how you came up with that, that's kind of where that brought me back to. And that's where I think of Mexican food. Is those authentic places where people might not think it's has the best health score, but it's going to be the most best tasting, authentic, and just real food that you're going to get.
Yeah.
And it brings you back a little bit to your peanut butter story. Is we were talking with the owner or the chef, and he's like, "Yeah, my chicken enchiladas, they're fantastic." And he goes, you know what the secret ingredient is? He's like, it's peanut butter.
Mm.
I'm like, that's wonderful, but you got to tell people.
Yeah.
You run into allergy.
True.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh my gosh. Well, and you know, every single rub that I have is a story or a dish. So they're all really fun. Some of them are simple, you know, just like I love bourbon. For one of the first bourbons that I really got into, like my dad, you know, he got these like ice cubes, and he was making like a old fashioned. He added like this maple syrup into it, and I never had, like, you know, I was not to a place where I really appreciated whiskey, you know, neat or whatever, and so just the flavor of just like maple syrup and bourbon combo, you know, just blew my mind as like a flavor profile. And so anything from just like simple stuff like that all the way to, you know, crazy stories, or this, you know, like Hickory Peach Porter, one of the beer cans comes from some ribs that I used to order from this, you know, old barbecue joint that was right across the street from my high school back in Georgia. And I remember asking the chef what his like secret was, and he used to say he would use peach juice in his barbecue mop sauce, and I just they were freaking delicious. So stuff like that, you know.
We have a peach vinaigrette. It's like a really crappy craft salad dressing that sneaks into our barbecue up here from time to time. And when you taste it, you're like, this motherfucker knows exactly what he's doing. This is what he's dialed right in. Like and you just taste that little bit on the back end, and you're like, oh, that's that's awesome, man.
I get it,
I
man.
love that. I love that stuff, man.
Yeah. So for those of you on here that don't know, I mean, check out after we're done. Check out Spiceology.com, and you can check out Derek's line of rubs there. You know, he's got this. It's a 6-pack of the beer ones, right?
Yeah, 6-pack.
There's Chipotle garlic, which is fantastic. Maple bourbon, Nashville hot. The Hatch chili one again is awesome. Gaucho steaks. There's another one that's really herb front. I can't think of the name of it.
Garlic herb.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. There it is. You know, the garlic herb and the Gaucho steaks. I mean, they're, you know, the ones that are going to have much more of that herbaceousness to it, or give you that more of that flavor. So check them out, and you know, order some if you don't have them. They're, you know, it's good stuff, and it's cool to know that it's not just, okay, I like these flavors, I'm going to throw them out there as a rub, but there's a story behind them that, you know, at least elicit a memory for Derek, that he developed these based on that memory to bring that forward, instead of just saying, hey, I want to just sell rubs. He's selling you a part of him through those memories, and that's kind of cool.
Well, I'm super pumped. One of my local guys, he does Traegers. He's got KJs. He's got a few. He's starting to build a barbecue store. And he asked me, he's like, what's your favorite rubs? Blah, blah, blah. And he, you know, he's got the Meat Church line. He's got this and that, right? And he's trying to sell to barbecue people. And I was like, man, you gotta get into Spiceology. Like, and that's the crappy thing for me. Everyone's like, well, what rub do you use? I'm like, it's a barrage of all of these. I'm like, that's all the time. I'm like, what you have to understand is I'm not just going to grab one thing. I'm going to be like, I know a little bit of this with a little bit of, and you know, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, but when you up your game a little bit to a company Spiceology and I don't get paid by Spiceology. I don't get free shit. I don't get, you know what I mean? They're just fucking that good. And I go on Amazon and I buy them all the time. I absolutely love. It's so easy to grab too. You see it, you know exactly what it is. Bang, 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 and they're big. They're not little dinky cans. They're, you know. So it is what it is. But he looked at it, and then he went back through my feed because he thought I was bullshitting. And then he came back. He's like, "I just put 30 grand order in," and he did. He brought your whole lineup and everything out here to like the deep north. I was like, as soon as you unbox that and get it up on the shelves, man, I'm doing you a promo video. And I was laughing. I was like, I'm going to come with a picanha in my pocket of my parka, and I'm going to grab a Gaucho right off of the shelf, and I'm going to season it up. And your fire alarm's about to go off, just so you know, because that's how we're going to do it. And he was like, please don't do that. Like, right away, he's like, please don't do that. And right away, I'm like, that's how we have to sell this. That's how we have to. But it was awesome. It was really awesome because the guy was like, he was looking for a small, you should get these four cans of rub. And then he looked into it. He was like, holy shit, this is a whole universe of things. And I'm like, yeah, man.
And
they're all good
too. And they got so many things.
Juniper berries. Who carries their own line of juniper berries? Like, that's, as soon as I saw that, I was like, whole cardamons? Like, really? Like, you guys have your own dill? Like,
oh yeah,
it's nuts.
Well,
so many good things to, yeah.
I'm just waiting too. I got some tricks up my sleeve.
Yeah, I can't, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not on their clock. I just really love their shit. So I
just wait till June.
A lot.
Just wait till June.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, and that's
until June.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just wait until June. You'll we got something that's cooking up that's it's pretty legit. It's pretty freaking awesome.
It's funny when you said you didn't want to jump on the chimichurri because it looked like weed. Because I remember one of Sasquatch's videos when he's like, and this one's the Maui Wowie. I was like, what did he say?
I did, yeah. I remember when they were pushing that, they asked a bunch of the collab guys. They were like, "Hey, can you do a video?" And I was like, "All right, let's do Huli Huli Chicken." Like, And so anyway, I started doing that, and I said Maui Wowie, and I think I got like 5 or 6. Like, I think I smoked that back in college or whatever.
Tommy Chung went to high school in my city, so yeah, just so we're on the same page here. That's
yeah. So we got that comment a lot.
Yeah, right away I was like, what? Maui Wowie, really? That's crazy. That's yeah. Good stuff though. Good stuff. Yeah.
So your Gaucho steak seasoning.
Yeah.
Again, that's one of those seasonings that's got a lot of herbs in it. Is that something that you, in your head as you're creating it, are thinking of it? Okay, I can use this as a seasoning, but I can also use this as a base for like something like a chimichurri or a gremolata or like a basting sauce.
Honestly, what I was thinking about is I have a lot of fun when I approached them about doing the South American line. It was really just about, all right, I have, regions of places that I've visited and things that I've loved and culinary cuisines that I loved. And so it's impossible to, make one flavor profile for like a whole region. I mean, it's just so difficult. And so I just wanted to approach it by like singular nuances. And there's a lot of small different, like adobo honey was probably one of the first ones that we came out with pretty quick. I actually originally wanted to call it Honey Fire, but I came to find out that there's a barbecue restaurant here in Nashville that's called Honey Fire. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm probably not going to do that. But I mean, we were going after the aji amarillo and just that like trifecta. And so that was one of the early ones. And then I really struggled between Brazil and Argentina. Argentina, I mean, the flavor profile that you think of for Argentina is chimichurri. I mean, that is it. And the hard thing was that Spiceology already had a dried chimichurri seasoning that was out. And the one thing I didn't want to do is be sacrilegious and like make like a weird avant-garde chimichurri that wasn't really chimichurri. I didn't think anybody would be happy with that. And then the other struggle is that like, if you really get down to it, like most South Americans were probably only using salt to more or less. Like the classic is just salt. Like that's it. And so
they get mad.
Oh,
they get mad
so
when
mad.
fuck with that. So,
and so I wanted to find a way that I could really incorporate more. I mean, I just, we can't make a Brazilian salt and just sell it. And so I wanted to do something different. And so it took me almost a year to basically develop the flavor profile. And most of it was just coming up with trial and error and figuring things out. But the idea behind Gaucho Steakhouse was actually, so I wanted it to be coarse because I actually wanted everybody to blend it. Like you blend it yourself and then you mix it with something. So like most of one of the chefs out in Spokane was adding like chipotle puree, blending it together, and then making like a paste basically. And so using it as some form of a marinade or something like that. And so I had remembered one of my friends, Brazilian friends from high school. That was like one of the things that his dad used to do. And so anyway, a lot of the inspo for that came from that. So it's a lot of problem solving.
There's zucchini in that?
Yeah. So that was actually not my idea. That Pete from Spiceology, he wanted to add a little bit more crunch to it. And he was like, well, what if we add dried zucchini to it? And at first I was like, no, we're not going to do that. And then he sent it to me. And man, it doesn't really add it doesn't really add any flavor at all.
It's just the texture.
It's just all texture. So that's where you're getting that flaky crunch.
Yeah. She's a neutral for sure.
Never would have thought to put that in there. And then, trying it, I've never would have thought that was actually in that rub. That's awesome.
No.
Yeah, and that's been the fun. Like I can't always. There's a reason why it's Derek Wolf and Spiceology because the guys at Spiceology, man, dude, they know their stuff. Everything like my original chipotle or my original maple bourbon would get stuck, would stick together. And so when we were developing it, and so they were adding in like natural powders, and I'm pretty sure it was like coconut husk something, where it was like a natural powder basically that they can add that would actually create less moisture and therefore cause maple bourbon to not stick together. So you're not left with something that's like sticking, a year later. And so they've really increased my knowledge about, dry, how to work with dry seasonings specifically.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's a huge, just learning the balance of that stuff, where you're adding something not necessarily to add flavor, but you're adding it to serve its purpose. And I think you can take that knowledge and then apply it to something you're making on the grill then, or some sauce that you're whipping together or just use different layers.
I'm not going to lie, that maple bourbon snuck into just about everything I cooked for the first month I had it. I try, and I'd use paprika to like bury it over on ribs and stuff like that. But the whole time I was like, this is maple, Canada, and bourbon, alcoholic. So we're good. Like everything about it is fantastic and it needs to go on everything. It was like the Nashville hot the first time I put it on popcorn.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And it was like, how have they not like done a documentary on this yet? Because like you've just ruined popcorn, like totally train wreck. We're done here. And no one thinks of that kind of stupid little stuff, but man, when you're cooking a sausage just to put on a charcuterie board or something like, and you dose it with that before you finish it off, and all of a sudden you just have that instant, like it's so packed with flavor. It just, I love food so much.
That maple bourbon on bacon, and then making an old fashioned with that maple bourbon bacon. Can't even say it, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I agree. Huge.
I know, and even the Hatch chili, or now I guess we call it Southwestern chili now. Like one of my favorite things is just adding salt, pepper, and hatch chili onto a steak, and that's what I like. That's probably one of my classic. Like me, I'm just cooking steak, just because it has a bright flavor to it. It's not going to be overpowering too much, but it's still going to have a little bit of heat just right at the end, and then you have that salt and pepper, just obviously to make steak.
So not even like a skirt steak. You're talking like a strip. You might just put a little bit of that on a strip steak together.
I know, but
I like that.
Well, I'll tell you what. I dumped a bunch of that into that tzatziki, right, and mixed it up for that lamb roast that I did. Oof. And as soon as I tasted that, I was like, our dips will probably never be the same. That's like, we can sneak that into pretty much any of the dips now that we do. Like, it's wow. And I couldn't believe how well it broke down too. That was the neat part, is that it just disappeared into the dip.
Well, it's I mean, it's my finest powder that I have. Yeah. So, and that's always been the thing too for me is, because I have to wear all the hats. So I have to look at it from a marketing perspective. I look at it from a, like a flavor profile perspective, as well as just something that is getting people excited. And so when you look at like the Americana line, you have some things that are a little bit bigger and granular size. I mean, you have like the Tennessee Smoke, that's a little bit bigger and granular size. The Americana line was hard too, because it was mostly just seasoning and rubs, and I wasn't looking too hard at the grain sizes. But then when you get into like South American, I mean, garlic herb is a larger grain. Gaucho Steakhouse is probably one of my largest grain. When we were doing the mesquite peppercorn lager, I mean, that was a pretty large grain seasoning, where a lot of those could be easily ground down. But there's just something better, even if it's not like a beautiful coat. It's just nice to have those big packs of flavor instead of just like this thin, just overarching layer of seasoning.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a huge caribou roast that is going to be done in that Gaucho. And that's, I cannot wait to put that together. Yeah.
What you do, blend it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's, I'm going to come up with a different kind of, and it's going to be very nice. It's going to be, I'm pumped. I'm so pumped. Caribou's my favorite also, by the way. Venison, whatever, caribou, hands down.
I've never had it. I've never had caribou.
If you ever see it on a menu anywhere, double down. I'm telling you right now, double down. You won't regret it. You'll remember this conversation. Caribou is by far my favorite venison ever. Huh. It's
Heck yeah. All right.
Yeah.
It's very similar to elk.
It is, but it's sweeter and tastier. It's tough. Like if you've had a wild boar, there's the shit wild boar, and then there's that every once in a while you get a unicorn, and it's like that's the one. Like caribou's always like that. It's gamey, but it's not gamey. It's super tasty, but also gamey. So it's one of those. You want to do it. Yeah. Oof. Yeah. The mezcal trompo stack. There you go. Noam, he's a good friend of ours.
Yeah. That was a good recipe.
Yeah. Yeah. Noam's a sweetheart. We love Noam.
Oh man.
Yep.
Well, we never even got to the bourbon.
Oh man. What were you sipping on tonight?
I am on like glass 3 or 4 of High West Yippee-Ki-Yay.
Nice.
So it's a double. It's their double rye, and then it's finished in vermouth and Syrah barrel. Ooh. So it has like a very clean, almost sweet cherry-esque finish on it.
So you get the spice of the rye first, and then it goes. Oh,
it's freaking delicious. The downside of it is that they don't make it anymore. So I will have this bottle and then one unopened bottle. I'm pretty sure if I sit on that for another couple of years, I could be a bajillionaire.
That sounds amazing. Why don't they make that anymore?
Dude, that is a question you need to bring up with High West. People were very upset that they don't make it anymore because it's, I think it's probably outside of their single barrels, because they do have some single barrels that are pretty fantastic. That, and then they have a Boo Rye, which is a bourbon and a rye mixture. That's pretty fantastic as well. The Yippee-Ki-Yay and then Midsummer Night's Dram. Mm-hmm. Those two probably their most primo level of bourbon or whiskey. And I don't know why it makes me upset why they switched, but oh well. And honestly, I'm all about BT. I love Buffalo Trace. It's hard to get enough of Buffalo Trace, and Stag Junior is just my favorite of all time.
I'm still nursing my bottle of Stag Junior because it's got this much left, and I haven't. And it's probably I have to look what batch it is. It's 129.4 proof, so I don't know what it's got to be batch 11 or it's older.
Yeah,
it's so good, and you just I'm really into the barrel proof.
Yep.
Stronger proof, and you just can't find those anymore. They've turned into a unicorn.
No.
Yeah, all those guys. I mean, don't even think about trying to find a BTAC or anything.
Oh, I told the story on here before, but right there, that one right there is a Pappy 15-year.
Oh.
My dad got it from this grocery store. He was walking in the Monday before Thanksgiving. My grandpa was coming over who liked bourbon. He was like, I'll get a Basil Hayden, and we'll make him a Manhattan with Basil Hayden. So he's grabbing that. The store manager walks over and he's like, hey, you like good bourbon? He's like, yeah. He goes, we got one bottle of Pappy. Do you want it? And my dad texts me. He's like, yeah, I'm like, yes. So it's a 2017 15-year. That was the year it was the best bourbon in the world, and he got it at retail.
My gosh.
Never again. Never again are we going to do this. So, it ended up being, that was my Christmas present from him. So the last 4 Christmases, that's the only time that we've drank in it is him and, my old man and I will have a little pour of the Pappy. We got maybe 2 Christmases left. But it was, it's one of those stories where you're never going to find it like that again.
Yeah, seriously. Well, and honestly, too, I love some of those higher ends and some of the really, really expensive whiskeys are great. I struggle sometimes with the really, really high end. Some of the Pappies I just don't really like personally. And some of them just have hype because they're old. I personally just don't like the 23-year. It's not good in my opinion. I think bourbon should be anywhere from 12 to 15 or 16 years. And then after that, it just starts to taste like wood. Mm-hmm. And so, but that 12-year mark, that's the bomb. Even I have not had the Eagle Rare 17, but I really, really want to try that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, honestly, that's all I'm I love those. I love Saz. I guess those are all Sazerac, Buffalo Trace.
Yep.
All those guys. I love High West. There's actually Dry Fly. Dry Fly whiskey out of Spokane, Washington is absolutely fantastic. If you really like wheat whiskeys, if you like Weller and Old Elk and even I think Pappy's a wheat. Yeah, I think for the price, it is so good. It is so freaking good. Dry Fly whiskey, highly, highly recommend. And they have I think it's a Camera. It's a wine. It's finished in a fortified wine barrel, and it's very similar. It has a similar-ishness in some ways to this Yippee, and it's so good. And for a good price, it's only $30 or $40.
Oh wow, Dry Fly.
Yeah,
that's so $200 Canadian. That sounds fantastic.
I'll keep an eye out for one. And I have a bottle of, actually my boss got it for me for Christmas. He had to order it from somewhere. It's Weller 107, but it ended up being a barrel pick, a store pick. and that's a really nice wheated bourbon. E.H. Taylor, again, another one that I love from BT. That's also a wheated bourbon. I would love their barrel proof stuff, but you can't. I mean, that's up there with Pappy prices almost on the black market now. That and their 18-year marriage.
And then it starts to get to you, like, is it even worth it? I mean, like, when I found Dry Fly for the flavor profile, I was like, Weller maybe has is just a little bit smoother, but I can find Dry Fly in everywhere. Yeah. And if it's like 5% not as good for $35, done.
Yep. I'm gonna have to look them up because more than anything, I got to see what the bottle looks like.
But I think the thing is, like, there's, you say all that, and the fun part is the hunt. Like, just finding and scoring something is so thrilling. But for your everyday drinkers, it's it's hard to pick. I'm probably going Buffalo Trace most of the time.
Well, that's up here. Just now, the Old Forester has a 150 anniversary edition that was just released up here.
Yeah.
And I know. I called every single guy I know, and they're like, we just had it, and it was just sold out. We had 12 bottles, and I was like,
12 bottles of it?
No, and I'm like, aren't I on your 12 list? He's like, no, you're on my 20-something list. I'm like, you motherfucker. Right away, I'm like, well, what do I have to do to get on your 12 list now?
It's to the point up here where a store will be like, last month we had 6 bottles of Buffalo Trace.
That's
regular Buffalo Trace. And I'm like, what?
Yeah. No, we were talking about this just before we came on. We, like, up in Canada, we're so blessed right now because lots of the snowbirds never came back. They stayed down in Phoenix. They stayed down in Florida. They didn't come back, so we're getting their cases of Blantons and everything, so we're super happy. They will come back, and we'll get nothing after that. But we're trying to fill our coffers in the meantime, right? Which is fine. But still, like, these unicorns pop up, the Stag Juniors, right? I haven't even seen a bottle of Stag Junior up here yet. And I'm like, I'm invested heavily with these guys. I know them by name now. And still they're like, yeah, we had it. We didn't call you. Sorry. Like, it's so tough. So tough. But what I need to do is start cooking people steaks and delivering it to the liquor store and be like, just so you know, I'm thinking about you. Are you thinking about me? Like, my parole officer is going to have lots to say about that. You're dropping steaks off at the liquor store, Mel. We have to talk. Yeah, that's
one of my other favorite pours right now is Old Forester 1920.
Yes,
that's what I was drinking tonight. That comes in at 115 proof, good flavor, nice and smooth. Big fan of that. I also like Four Roses.
Four Roses is great.
They've had some great stuff. One of my favorite bottles was actually a single barrel of theirs, and I wish we would know what recipe all those single barrels are out of their 10, because that one, like, I had one bottle and I was like, this is one of the best bottles of bourbon I've ever had. And I have a habit of sometimes I pick up a bottle and I don't open it for a few months because they print out what barrel it's from, where it was from, and usually it's all in the same store group. If I would have tried it right away, I could have gone back and grabbed a couple more bottles. But you're just lost when you go to those single barrels like that.
Yeah. No, I get that. And gosh, that was Old Forester's freaking good. Statesman. That's a really, really fun one. And oh my gosh. The Knob Creek 10-year, or not Knob Creek, Bullet 10-year has been pretty good. I mean, it's a different flavor profile. But, hey, there you go. What is that?
Hold on. The cask strength,
I got
66%.
Is Pendleton a big thing in Canada?
No.
Okay, so that's it's like Foster's beer in America.
Okay.
It's not really like Australian or something like that. Like Pendleton's not really Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah, we haven't seen much of that at all.
Another great everyday drinker, which is super cheap. I should say great. A good everyday drinker, which is super cheap, that I've kind of started to like, is Old Grandad. They're 114 stronger proof. You can get for like $20, and if you just want to sit down with a strong bourbon, it's good.
There you go. Yeah,
Bond. Bottled and Bond. That one there. That's what I use for my Manhattans.
Yeah. How do you argue with that?
The funny thing is, like, I went through a big kick for a while where, like, when I first got into bourbon, you just first fall in love with it with something. So, like, I think I got Knob Creek was actually one of the first things that I really enjoyed. And then I got into Bullet, and I went through a big phase of really loving rye style whiskeys. And then I got drawn into Buffalo Trace, and then you just you get hit with this idea that like it's hard to find, like you can't find it or whatever. And so you get obsessed with going to your liquor stores, finding different liquor stores, driving another 30 minutes outside of your way. And your wife is calling you like, why have you been gone for 2 hours? And you're like, you just went to go and buy toilet paper. Like, what are you doing? And so anyway, you just I got so obsessed with that. And so, and I got really lucky too. I got really turned on to them at the same time as I was starting to do a video series with Buffalo Trace. And so the funny thing is too, is dude, I begged to get some crazy stuff. And the only person that can get anything he wants is Harlan, is the master distiller. He's the only one. Not even the guys running, not even the marketing director, none of them. They can't. The only thing they can get access to is Buffalo Trace. Outside of that, they have to get sincere permission in order to, I don't know. They got that place on freaking lockdown. And the funny thing is when I was talking with Harlan, I asked him, I was like, what is your favorite thing to drink? And he was like, I've had everything. I've tried it all. I've tested it all. And the funny thing is, and I'm starting to understand what he meant, is he's like, there's something amazing about a bourbon that no matter what, no matter when, you can just pick it up and have it. And that's it. And that's Buffalo Trace for him. He's like, he almost, unless he's testing things, the only thing he's drinking is Buffalo Trace. Because it's hard to find a bourbon where you don't find your palate just completely, pulverized after having it. And there's really not a lot of bourbons that leave you feeling somewhat almost, not refreshed, but, refreshed to some degree. And Buffalo Trace is one of them. And so there's just something, so it's kind of similar to seasoning in some way too, where it's man, you get to a point where it's it's really fun to play with flavors. It's really fun to do whatever. But when you know what you like, there's something special about just liking that one thing and it being consistent and it being amazing.
For me, straight up, so Buffalo Trace in an old fashioned, no problem, right?
Yeah.
Buffalo Trace on the rocks, no problem. That's easy. You're smoking a stogie, you're doing whatever. You're over at the brother-in-law's and you're just having a dip. There it is. Super easy. Same deal there. Montreal steak spice.
Yeah.
Our Montreal steak spice, you can sneak that on taters, you can sneak that on steak. It's an easy peasy, right? Then you've got your salt, pepper, garlic. This is exactly what you're talking about. I will totally validate that 100%.
And it's just really hard to find stuff like that,
Yeah.
And luckily, when you do, is it 9 times out of 10, it's not the stuff that's the hardest to find. But Buffalo Trace can be hard to find. But just Buffalo Trace itself, by itself, the fun thing is that it's so versatile. You can use it in a cocktail. You can use it in a mixed drink. You can drink it straight up. You can do whatever. And it just always has good flavor. Whereas, like, you know, I've had like birthday edition, or I've had Old Forester birthday
bourbon.
Yeah. And hey, there you go. Meat.
So this is single restaurant here in Edmonton. They are traditional, like old school barbecue. This is their last bottle from their barrel select when they did it. They did a grand tour and everything.
Wow.
And they gave this to me on one of my like drop-ins and whatever. They're like, we'd like to give you the last bottle we have.
That's awesome. Freaking awesome.
And like my heart just like dropped a little bit. I was like, I love you guys. And they're like, hey, we've got like 3-4 items on our menu from what you're doing. You know what? Like, it was awesome. It was totally one of those things. And they're like, well, you know, crack it on a special occasion. And I realized it's not like, you know, but it's very near and dear to me. So very happy with it. And of course it's got to be Buffalo Trace, right? So,
well, I mean, the cool thing about Buffalo Trace is I get a lot of questions from people that are like, okay, what's a good starter bourbon for me? You know, Buffalo Trace is one of those that I'll tell them, okay, Buffalo Trace and Eagle Rare, they're good starter bourbons. They're hard to find. You know, the other one that I tell them that's easy to find and really good for someone who's first getting started with bourbon is Basil Hayden's. Part of that is because it was the first bourbon I ever had, the first good bottle the first bottle of bourbon I ever bought. I'll still go back to it now and then. It's mild. You know, it's got the flavor. It's not going to step up and bite you. It's not a high proof, but it's a good starter bourbon. But it is still one of those, like, you know, for me at least, knowing that was the first pour of bourbon I had at this barbecue place with my wife's cousin, and then, you know, that weekend when I got home, that was the first bottle I bought. So when you go back and drink that, even though it might not be my favorite bourbon, it tastes good because you remember those things as you drink it.
Yeah.
Well, and that was the first that I had too, was basil. Because that's a part of Jim Beam. And so you had the basil, and then I got, you know, hooked into Knob Creek and some of the flavor profiles. The funny thing is, like, going back to some of these old bourbons that I drank a long time ago or whatever, you know, they're just, the flavor is so different than what I remember it being, and what I've kind of changed my flavor profile to like as well. I mean, mine just changes all the time. Man, I went all of 2020, the only thing that I drank was wheat. Like, that's all I wanted was wheat whiskey. And so that's why, like, you know, I would nab and buy any Weller that I could get my hands on just to, you know, have it. And that was what I was trying to sip on. And that's when I found like Dry Fly, and just fell in love with that. And so then the funny thing is like now, like I'm really into rye whiskeys. Like we had that like collab whiskey with Nashville Barrel Company. And it was a rye. Like, it was so freaking delicious. And so I think that like ryes have a lot of fun flavor profiles. Classic bourbon, it's like, you know, it's really hard to beat, you know, your Buffalo Traces, whatever you want to say. But I don't know, it just changes too.
Whistle Pig's rye is actually quite nice. Yeah, I like that. I like that one.
And it's funny, the like progression you go through. When I first started drinking, it was, okay, Basil Hayden's on the rocks, or, you know, one of those big ice cubes in it because I needed to water it down. And then it gets to the point where now I'm like, I want the highest proof I can get. Well, not necessarily just the highest proof, but I want high proof, full proof, and I do it neat now. You know, I don't want to water it down. You know, and there's some people that might say, okay, what you're supposed to do is add a few drops of water to some of those and just let it open up. And, you know, I'm not sophisticated enough maybe to pick up all that, but I know that I moved from that wanting it to be just a little watered down, you know, and that was Basil Hayden's even just 80 proof, where now I want, you know, the 125, 115, 100, you know, 30 proof.
Yeah.
And
that's when you just start coughing.
Yeah, that's the neat part. I find my whole palate is changing with the bourbons, with the ryes, with the cigars, with the steaks, with the aging, with everything, right? And I'm like, maybe I'm messing my senses up and like just nobody's telling me. Maybe that's what's happening.
I keep waiting for the CDC to say that bourbon, like high grav or like super high bourbon, is what keeps you from getting COVID. They haven't said that yet, but like maybe there is something.
There it is, right there. That's what you get right there. Yeah, that's. Don't worry, we're okay over here. Everything's fine.
You just gotta be lightly pickled.
Yeah, I get that like every Saturday or Sunday. They're like, Mel, what are you doing? Fighting Corona over
Mel, I thought about you.
there? I'm like, okay, yeah.
I thought about you when I went to the liquor store the other day. There is a bourbon called Wicked Pickle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there you go. Well, that's the rye. They call it the whiskey pickleback, right? It's a real thing. It is a real thing. The pickleback is a real thing, but is
it a pickle flavored whiskey?
I believe it's a pickle flavored bourbon. I haven't tried the peanut butter bourbons either. I can't
do any of those like flavored bourbons like that.
The original pickleback was a shot of whiskey followed by a shot of pickle juice. I believe that was the pickle juice first and then the whiskey.
That's for what? That's for proper hydration.
To make sure you're getting your
vitamins.
The man knows that's so you don't have to drink it all in the morning. You had some of it the night before, so that's how it goes.
Is there like a whiskey Red Bull pickle juice? Like, is that one of the combos?
So you've also been to the strip joints I frequent. That's fantastic. That's awesome.
That's just called the Mel.
The
PhD is the whiskey, the Red Bull, then Jaeger, or opposite, whiskey, Jaeger, Red Bull, pickle juice.
I'm not allowed
then
Jaeger.
A lime with salt.
The wife has completely kiboshed Jaeger for the remainder of my childhood years. I'm not allowed to now dip into the Jaeger.
I just had one night. That was all I ever had. It wasn't even in college, too. We were hanging out with friends at Thanksgiving, and we have my father-in-law. He has a crazy best friend, and he was like the dude in college that like you wish you kind of knew, and he loves Jaeger so much. And so I've never done, he got the freaking 1.5 or 1.75 liter freaking insane Jaeger. And I don't remember that night very well.
Well, that's so for everybody watching, especially, like I'm not allowed to have Jaeger. The wife gets very cross with anybody that tries to bring it in the house, and they will tend to like carry it back out to the car without my even knowing that they tried. It is what it is, right?
Yeah.
But, back in my heyday, I used to have a mason jar or something like this that would be this full of ice, and then we just top it up with Jaeger with a straw, and I would just Motorhead would be playing very unreasonably loud in the background, and I would just have my time, and it was fantastic. And we'd have big dumpster fires and stuff like that. It was a great evening. And then one day she's like, "You have to grow up, and we're starting here." And
I think I'm going to have a hangover just from hearing you tell that story.
It was Chris. I'm not lying to you. When I walked into the Rippers and I ordered my first drink was $38.
Wow.
And then everyone after that was $38. $38. That was how from the shots that had to go in it to make that mason jar.
What were you doing, like a double LIT or something?
Oh, it was It was perfect. It was just Jaeger with a little bit of Red Bull to cap it off over like ice. And it was a sipping drink. It wasn't a slamming drink. It was a sipping drink, but I would keep that even keel that I was looking for all night long as I kept. And the wife was like, "That's not even at all." And we need to stop you from doing that ever again. And that's...
Well, that's the one reason why I love bourbon. Like, when you really get into it, like good bourbon, like it's, you get a couple good glasses into you, you're feeling great, everything's good. Yeah. And the nice thing about bourbon is that, man, it is the only liquor or maybe the only like type of alcohol that I just don't wake up feeling like I regret my life.
Yeah, it's clean. It's clean.
It's so clean.
That's the.
It's not riot juice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's riot juice. That was what I was trying not to say right there. That's why I'm.
You're not drinking Everclear and Kool-Aid.
Exactly. I'm not being carried out by a bouncer as he does this the entire time out the door. Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's there's a certain vibe that goes along with sipping bourbon.
Yes.
So that's part of it, where you're just kind of relaxing and chilling with that. And we've all learned our tequila lesson. We've all had our Jaeger lesson, but bourbon's different.
Yeah. No, definitely, it's something I can have a cigar by the fire, especially after smoking all day long. Like, I always throw my daughter's birthdays into this. It's a long day of smoking. I will be smoking meat for like 20 hours before the party, and then I still have to entertain everybody at the party that came for the smoked meat, all of that. And then there's still like the fire afterwards and everybody and dying down. But you can drink bourbon almost through the entire thing. And at the end of the day, like, you're not a write-off, which is nice. That's the big part. You're still able to calmly, coolly, collectively do what you're doing. That's nice. I like that.
And yet you still feel like you had some good, alcohol. So
exactly.
And good flavor.
Yeah, you're not a train wreck, and you're able to carry a conversation, but you've been in that pocket for like 10 hours, which is nice. That's
yeah. We're like 2 hours into this, and we're just talking about how awesome it is to be slightly drunk on whiskey.
Welcome to After the Cook, Mr. Derek Wolf. Welcome to After the Cook. That's
that was just getting started.
Yeah.
All right, so what's hour 3 gonna hold?
Yeah, we don't go there very often. That's
my gosh. Yeah. That's so funny.
Yeah. No, you know what? We have a lot of fun on here. We have quite a few people that we've met along the way doing our thing. It's pretty cool that there's an entire like genre of people that are doing exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And that means a ton to me, that not only are we talking about this, but there's like an entire group of people that are doing exactly what we're saying, like on their deck with their dads or their uncles or their brothers or whatever. Like, it's so neat. And I have people reach out all the time that are like, last Tuesday you had that episode and like this hit me. I love it. I absolutely love it. And man, I appreciate you coming on. This is huge. This is huge, man. I thank you very much for doing it. It's very humbling for me, and it's very cool. Very cool.
I'm not going to say that because I don't want you to big head. So, no, I mean, we wanted to start this because, people couldn't go out. You couldn't go to the pub. You couldn't go, to wing night at your local bar. So we wanted to be able to kind of have that dive bar experience. But what came out of it, which was really cool, was instead of it just being your close friends that you live close to, we're able to do this with other people now. Like, Derek and I, we can't get together to have a beer right now. I mean, even pre-COVID, I mean, our schedules are busy. It's hard to coordinate things. Mel's in Canada, and but we're able to do all this together. And I think that's, if nothing else, that's one cool thing that's coming out of all of this madness that we're in, is that we're finding different ways to connect with people, and in some ways it's going to bring people closer together too.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And I'm just very thankful to be on here, and I appreciate it. It's been good convo, and
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
I think that's a wrap. Hell of a episode of After the Cook. This will be a lot of fun. You guys can catch it again if you didn't catch all of it on Mel's YouTube. Eric, you're more than welcome to come back anytime you want. Just hit us up, and if there's something you want to talk about, we can definitely do that.
Doors open for you, brother. Anytime.
Thanks, guys.
That's it. Right on, man. Thank you very much. This
Cool.
is great.
All right, guys. Everybody have a good night. Be safe. Have fun.
Night.